Thunder cracked so loud it made the windshield shake. Rain slammed the empty highway like fists on a locked door. Headlights cut a pale tunnel through the black. And in that tunnel, an old man saw a figure in the road, small, soaked, and waving both arms. Gus Calder hit the brakes. His truck fished, gravel spit, and the wipers hammered like frantic hands. In front of him sat a dead sedan with steam pouring out of the hood. Beside it stood a girl, maybe 20, maybe younger, hair plastered to her face, jacket ripped at the sleeve, a backpack hugged tight to her chest like it carried her last breath. "Help," she said, voice shaking. "Please." I didn't know who else to. Gus lifted a hand. "Easy, kid. You picked the right driver." He stepped into the rain, the cold biting through his bones. He'd been a mechanic in Dry Creek for 47 years. He could smell a broken radiator before he could see it. One glance at the white cloud rolling off the engine told him there was no easy fix here, not on the side of the road, not in this storm. "What's your name?" he asked, lifting the hood anyway. The heat hit his face like an oven door. "Ava," she said. "Ava Hart." "Gus," he answered. "You alone?" She nodded, hugging the pack tighter. "I need to get to town, to Dry Creek, in this mess." He heard himself chuckle, not because anything was funny, but because fear leaves little room for silence. "Well, lucky for you, I live there. Shops open late when it rains." He shut the hood. "Car's not going anywhere tonight. Grab your bag." She didn't move. "What's in it?" he asked softly. Her eyes flicked to the dark road behind them, then back to him. "Proof," she whispered, "of something bad." Gus knew the look. He'd seen it in men who came home from mines, and in women who sat in his waiting area with swollen eyes. People who had learned a truth the hard way. He nodded toward the truck. "Come on." They climbed in. The cab smelled like oil and cedar chips. Gus tossed his old army blanket across her shoulders without asking. He saw her notice the stitched name on it, Miriam, and how her hand softened when it touched the thread. "My late wife," he said, starting the engine. "She'd smack me if I let you freeze." They rolled back onto the road, tires slicing water. Behind them, 2 pairs of headlights appeared where the highway bent. Black SUVs. Fast. Ava stiffened. "Don't stop," she said, voice gone thin. "I wasn't planning to," Gus said, and pressed the gas. The SUVs grew larger in the mirror. No plates in front. Windows tinted. They flashed their brights twice. It wasn't a request. It was a warning. Gus didn't blink. He downshifted. Let the old truck's V8 roar. "You in trouble, kid?" "Not with the law," Ava said. "With someone who thinks they are the law. Victor Hale." The name tasted like rust. Ava's breath caught. She didn't nod. She didn't have to. Hale owned half of Dry Creek and acted like he owned the other half too. The mines, the water plant, the mayor. Everybody knew it. Nobody could prove it. The SUVs pulled closer. The one in the left lane drew even with Gus, trying to box him in. Another flash of brights. The storm swallowed the road. The world shrank to 3 things. The wheel in his hands, the girl beside him, and the ugly weight of someone else's power pressing at his door. "Hold on," Gus said. He cut the wheels sharp right, slung the truck onto a dirt access road he knew by heart, and killed the headlights. Mud sprayed, trees loomed, and the storm hid them like a friend with wide arms. The SUVs flew past, horns blaring, gone into the black. Ava exhaled hard and finally looked at him like he was real. "Why did you help me?" Gus looked back at the rain. "Because once, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. Been paying that debt ever since." She stared at the blanket again, at Miriam, at the stitches tightened by a careful hand. "I'll pay you," she said, fumbling at the backpack zipper. "Put that away," Gus said, a little too fast. "I'm not for sale." She stopped. Something like trust crossed her face and vanished. "I wasn't paying you for helping. I was paying you for risking it. You keep your money, Gus said. You tell me what's in that bag instead. Ava's throat worked. Documents, she said. Test results. Water samples. Emails. Payments. Her words came faster now, like stones rolling downhill. People got sick in 4 towns. They said it was random. It isn't. It's the water. And Victor Hale knows. He's been dumping runoff into the old quarry. Gus felt the steering wheel go slick in his hands, not from rain, from memory. The hospital hall. Miriam's fingers cold in his. The doctor who wouldn't look him in the eye when he said the word cancer. How long? Gus asked, voice flat. Years, Ava said. Your town was the first. Lightning split the sky. It lit the trees like bones. Ava reached into the bag and pulled out a clear sealed jar. The water inside looked normal. It looked like life. There's arsenic in this, she whispered, and bent. It's from the old quarry tap behind the school football field. There are kids who drink from that spigot when they run drills. Gus's jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. For once he made himself look at his grief, and not away from it. Miriam never liked football, he said. His eyes watered, but it wasn't a storm anymore. Said it made boys think pain was a badge. They sat with the rain for a beat that stretched too long. Then Gus turned the key again. The engine caught like a promise. You said you needed Dry Creek, he said. I'll do you one better. You need my shop. Why? Ava asked. Because the first thing a bully takes is a voice, Gus said. And the first thing you're getting back is a microphone. They slipped through the trees and down the old road to town. As they cleared the last bend, Gus saw something that made his chest burn. 2 black SUVs idled across from his shop. Wipers beating, men inside waiting. Ava's hand found his sleeve. I can run. You'll do no such thing, Gus said. Not while I'm breathing. He cut the engine, put the truck in neutral, and let them roll in with the storm, quiet as remorse. Ready? He asked. Ava nodded, but her eyes were full. Ready? Gus smiled, but it was the hard kind. Then let's make some noise. And with rain drumming like 1,000 small fists on 1,000 tin roofs. The old mechanic and the desperate girl stepped into the lights. Cliffhanger. The shop door opened before they reached it. A shadow filled the frame and called Gus by his first name. Evening, Augustus, the shadow said, voice smooth as oil and just as slicked out. Victor Hale stood in the doorway like he owned the weather. He wore a raincoat that probably cost more than Gus's truck, and a smile that had never been honest in its life. 2 men flanked him, storm-colored suits, storm-colored eyes. Ava stopped so fast her boots squeaked on wet concrete. Gus didn't. This is a private shop, he said, shouldering past. We're closed. Hale's smile widened. Funny, he said, stepping inside anyway. I never took you for a man who closes. Gus hit the light. The shop flickered awake lifts, tool chests, a 72 C10 with its hood up, a million quiet parts waiting to become something bigger than themselves. It smelled like motor oil, coffee, and the last place in town where anybody told the truth. Hale looked around as if he'd wandered into a museum he planned to burn down later. You've had a good run here, he said, but runs end. Gus took off his wet cap and set it on the counter. You here for a reason, or just to hear yourself speak? Hale nodded toward Ava's backpack. She is carrying something that doesn't belong to her. Ava hugged it tighter. Her chin came up an inch. It's hers if she bled for it, Gus said. Something flashed in Hale's eyes, gone too quick. You have grandchildren, Gus? None of your concern. Everything in this town is my concern, Hale said softly. Be careful what you decide tonight. Some decisions don't have reverse gears. Gus stepped closer until rain beaded on his shoulders fell to the floor like little hard choices. Get out of my shop. Hale's smile vanished. Break his fingers if he touches me, he told the men. He turned back to Gus. I do hope you won't be foolish. Ava stepped between them, voice steady. I have copies, she said. Take this bag and 10 more will appear. Take me and the files go to the state. Take him, and she looked Hale right in the eye. You'll make the whole town choose sides. They won't choose you. Hale laughed, the sound small and dark. They always choose the paychecks, dear. The taller guard reached for Ava's shoulder. Gus moved like a man who had been young once and never forgot. He didn't punch. He didn't shout. He grabbed the guard's wrist, bent one finger, just so, and set the man on his knees without breaking a nail. Wrench, Gus said. Ava blinked. What? Top drawer, he said, not looking away. 3/8 drive, long handle. Her hand found metal. It felt like a line thrown to a drowning friend. She slapped the wrench into his palm. Gus didn't swing it. He handed it to the guard who still stood. The man took it without thinking. Now, Gus said calmly, still pinning the other man with 2 fingers. Go outside and fix the windshield wiper on your boss's SUV. Left blades loose. You'll be stranded out there when the storm kicks again. He glanced at the kneeling man. Your partner can supervise. The guard actually looked to Hale for permission. Hale's jaw twitched. He nodded once. The men backed out, confusion all over their faces. 10 minutes, Gus said to Hale. After that, I call the sheriff and report trespassers. Hale looked at Ava's bag again. You won't make it 10 minutes, he said. Neither of you. He turned, coat whispering, and stepped back into the rain, leaving the door open like a threat. The second he was gone, Gus slid the deadbolt and killed the front lights. He hustled Ava to the back room. What are we doing? She whispered. Gus pulled a dusty tarp off a waist-high cabinet and spun its old brass dial. We're going to speak. Through a safe. Ava blinked. Gus cracked a smile. Through a radio. He swung the heavy door open. Inside sat a gray metal box with dials and a mic. Vacuum tubes warm even in the cold. KDRE 89.3 glowed a sleepy orange. A hand-lettered sign above it read, When the river floods. The radio rides. This old county transmitter runs off its own batteries, Gus said, fingers already moving like they'd been waiting for this. Installed it after the '98 washout. Only goes 5 miles. But 5 miles is our whole world. He flipped to toggles. The tubes brightened. The mic hummed. You're going to put me on the air, Ava said. Gus nodded at the stool. You said the first thing a bully takes is a voice. Time to take it back. She swallowed. If I speak, they'll come. Gus glanced at the shop camera's old black domes. He'd mounted himself. They're already here. Ava sat. She put the backpack on the bench like a newborn. She looked at the mic, at the tiny red light that said live, and at the storm-blurred window where a shape moved and then was gone. Dry Creek, she whispered, almost to herself. Do you know what's in your water? Gus reached and squeezed her shoulder once. Then he hit on air. Ava took a breath. Dry Creek, she said into the storm, voice small at first, then steady. My name is Ava. I'm not from here, but your town saved me tonight. An old mechanic pulled me out of the rain when 2 trucks followed me like wolves. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't ask for money. He just gave me his wife's blanket and said, You're safe. I'm speaking because you deserve to be safe too. Gus saw the red light flicker with her words. He felt something else flicker in him, something he thought the doctors took when they took Miriam. Hope, maybe, or fight. Ava unzipped the backpack and took out the jar. This, she said, voice clear now, is quarry tap water from behind your football field. It has benzene, arsenic, and chromium in it. I have 10 samples. I have lab tests, and I have emails from Victor Hale's people telling workers to flush and forget. Thunder rolled so long it felt like the sky was breathing. If you think I'm lying, Ava said, meet me at Gus Calder's shop in 20 minutes. Bring your questions. Bring your phones. Bring your kids. Gus met her eyes. She nodded. He killed the mic. Silence rushed in so fast it had weight. Are we insane? Ava whispered. Probably, Gus said, and smiled for real this time. The door shook. A fist pounded. Another. Voices rose outside, angry and close. Not just two anymore. Ava stood. They came. Gus peeked the camera. He saw umbrellas, ponchos, faces. Not Hale's men. Dry Creek. They all came, he said, throat tight. He unbolted the door. Rain pushed in. So did 20 people, then 30, then more, dripping and talking over each other, eyes bright with fear or fire. Sometimes both. You said it on the radio, a woman told Ava, clutching a boy's hand. So we came. The last one through shoved the door closed and threw the bolt. He wore a sheriff's star and a raincoat older than his anger. He looked at Gus. He looked at Ava. He looked at the backpack like it was a bomb and a Bible. Miss, he said, voice rough, if what you said is true, I'll stand between you and hell. He turned and stared through the crack in the curtain at the black SUVs idling across the street, and we won't have to wait long to meet it. Cliffhanger. A window shattered at the back of the shop. Someone had found another way in. Glass fell like ice. The back window blew in with the wind, and a man's boot crunched over shards. The sheriff spun, hand on his sidearm. Everybody down. Mothers pulled kids to the floor. Old men ducked behind tire racks. Gus stepped in front of Ava, without thinking, and felt the years drop off his shoulders like a coat. A figure climbed through the window frame. Rain made him shine. He raised both empty hands. Don't shoot, he said. Please. It's just me. Gus squinted. Benny Rojas -20-8, former wide receiver for Dry Creek High. Now foreman at the water plant, stood in the broken glass with his palms up and eyes haunted. He looked like a man who'd seen the ocean for the first time and realized he had been drowning on land. Sheriff, Benny said, voice breaking, they told me to flush the test logs. I didn't. I kept them. They're in my truck. The room went silent and sharp. Why now? The sheriff asked, still aiming, not unkind. Benny's mouth trembled. My little girl started getting nosebleeds, he swallowed. I couldn't carry that in my lungs anymore. Hale's SUVs idled louder, as if they knew a story was about to change. Gus gestured Benny forward. Get him in, he told a couple of farmers who used to fix their plows under Gus's lift. They helped Benny over the sill like he was stepping into church. Ava zipped the backpack and slung it across her shoulders. Sheriff, she said, urgency reassembling her voice, piece by piece. We have tests, but we need chain of custody. We need town signatures. We need to show this isn't just to scared people and a radio. You're not scared, the sheriff said, almost accusing. I'm terrified, she said, and I've been terrified long enough. A loud knock hit the front door. Not a fist, a metal ring, the kind cops use when they don't plan to ask twice. Sheriff, a voice boomed through the rain, half friendly, half knife. Open up, or we come in. The sheriff didn't move. Victor, he said softly, like he was tired of saying the name in his head. He turned to the room. We need to move these people to the church. Storm cellar, space, and Father Ray won't let even the devil push through that door. I'll stay, Ava said. No, Gus said at the same time. She faced him. Rain made her braids heavy. I didn't come here to hide. Neither did I, he said. But Miriam would climb out of her grave to knock me dead if I let a girl stand between me and a man like Hale. At her name, Ava's face changed. Your wife, she said carefully. She died from something the doctors didn't fight hard enough. Gus cut in, not trusting the words that wanted out. He swallowed what burned. We'll talk later. The sheriff snapped into motion. Ben, grab your logs. You three. He pointed at the farmer's arm. Yourselves with whatever won't get me sued. He turned to Ava. Miss Hart, you and Gus are coming with me. Ava jolted. How do you know my name? The sheriff half smiled like a man who had been waiting to show a card. Because 3 months ago a journalist called my office and said, "Sheriff Briggs, when the storm comes, a girl named Ava Hart will show up with a bag full of truth. You'll know what to do." He glanced at Gus. "That journalist was your wife's oncologist." Gus felt his knees go loose. "Dr. Klein. She's been collecting files from 4 counties," Briggs said. "Said she owed Miriam a promise to make the right people hurt." The ring hit the door again. "Last chance," Hale's man called. "Out the bay," Gus said. He hit the garage door opener. Wind and rain blew in like 1,000 hard questions. The sheriff hustled the townspeople toward the alley, Benny clutching a battered file box like it was bones. Gus and Ava hung back. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Buying 10 seconds," he said. Grabbing a length of chain from the pegboard, he looped it through the bay door handle and the lift post, yanked it tight, and set the lift to rise. The steel arm came up slowly, dragging the chain to knee height, then waist, then throat, turning the bay into a trap for anyone who tried to run through. "Go," he told Ava. She didn't. "How did Miriam meet Dr. Klein?" she asked over the storm. To calm for the moment, to be only panic, Gus looked away. "Miriam made people talk, even doctors." "And what did she ask for?" Ava pressed. "Names," he said. "Patterns. What keeps happening to the same kind of people?" Ava blinked once, twice, and something fell into place in her face. "I knew it," she breathed. She unzipped the backpack, fished out a stained envelope, and pressed it into his hand. "This was addressed to you." Gus stared at the writing. He knew that slope and curl like he knew the sound of his own tires on gravel. Miriam Calder. His throat closed. He didn't open it. He couldn't, not with boots thudding on the front step and metal kissing wood. "Later," he said, jamming the envelope under his shirt like a secret. "Move." They sprinted into the rain. The sheriff's SUV idled in the alley, lights off, engine like a held breath. People piled into pickup beds and plain sedans, faces turned toward the church steeple, stabbing the sky. "Get in," Briggs barked. They dove into the SUV. Briggs hit the gas and fishtailed up the alley, the shop disappearing behind them in a gray wall of water. "Father Ray knows we're coming?" Gus asked, wiping rain from his eyes. "He called me after your broadcast and said, 'My doors are open, my cellar is dry, and my fists are not as soft as God would prefer,'" Briggs said. Then killed the siren as they turned onto Maple. Ava was breathing fast and quiet, the way people breathe when they're choosing to live. "Sheriff," she said, "steady now. If we want this to stick, we need to get into the water plant office before Hale does. He'll burn every log by morning." Briggs gripped the wheel. "I swore I'd never break a lock for a politician again," he said, "but I'll break one for a town." "Then we need someone who knows the plant," Gus said, turning in his seat. "Benny, how many doors between us and the records room?" "3, Benny said from the back, voice small. "One coded, one chained, one no one uses, because the key was lost last year." He swallowed. "The key is in my boot." Briggs huffed a laugh that had no humor. "Son, you're promoted." They swung into the church lot. The bell was ringing not for mass, but for now. Father Ray stood under the eaves like a lighthouse, sleeves rolled, jaw set. He saw Ava and raised a hand. "You brought the truth," he called. She lifted the pack. "It weighs about 20 pounds, she said. "Good," Father Ray said. "Truth should have weight." They hustled the families inside. Briggs grabbed 2 deputies, who had arrived in plain clothes, and a teenage volunteer, who looked like he'd been waiting his whole life for a good fight. "Where are we going?" the kid asked. "Field trip," Gus said, and clapped him on the shoulder as they loaded back into the SUV. Lights flashed at the far end of the street. Hale's SUVs turned the corner like sharks sniffing a wound. "Go," Ava said. Briggs went. They barreled toward the water plant, low concrete, chain-link fence, the hum of war in peacetime. The storm softened, like it wanted to hear how this part ended. Benny led them through a side gate. The coated door beeped red, then green under his trembling fingers. The chained door yielded to a crowbar like a bad habit. The lost key door gave them 5 seconds of false hope before its lock surrendered with a click like a confession. They slipped into the records. Room metal shelves, old binders, boxers that smelled like paper the world had tried to forget. Benny grabbed 2 binders and a hard drive. "These," he said, "and the camera over there," he pointed. "It's fake." Ava scanned with her phone anyway. "It's not broadcasting," she said. "We're off-grid." "Not quite," Briggs said, listening to his radio crackle with voices he didn't trust anymore. They were almost out when headlights raked the wall. Hale's SUV slid to a stop at the gate. Briggs pushed the evidence into Ava. Hansen looked at Gus. "You ever hotwire a forklift?" "Son," Gus said, "I've hotwired a Sunday." He sprinted to a yellow forklift, popped the panel, and coaxed the old beast awake with 2 wires and a prayer. He rammed it into a stack of pallets and let them tumble in front of the gate like a wall made by men who refused to be moved. Hale's men shouted. Metal banged. A dog barked where there was no dog to bark. The night felt like a chest tight with breath it couldn't release. "Out the south door," Benny said, backing them through a corridor that smelled like bleach and lies. They burst into rain and ran for the fence. Briggs boosted Ava, then Benny, then the kid. Gus climbed last, old bones arguing, heart saying shut up and climb. Boots pounded the cement behind them. A hand grabbed Ava's ankle and yanked her down. She hit the ground hard, the binder flying, pages in the rain like white birds, too heavy for the sky. Gus dropped back, landed, and grabbed the wrist on her ankle, twisting not cruel, not sloppy, just enough. The man yelped and let go. Ava scooped the papers as if they were names of people who would live if she didn't lose them. They ran. They didn't stop until they were back in the SUV. Doors slammed, lungs burning. Briggs didn't wait for a vote. He floored it. "How many enemies do we have now?" the kid asked, wide-eyed and halfway laughing because fear needs somewhere to go. Gus looked at Ava. Soaked hair sticking to her cheek, binder to her chest like a Bible. "Enough," he said, and realized he almost felt young. Briggs turned toward town. "Where to?" Ava answered without thinking. "The school." "Why?" Briggs asked. She looked out at the empty main street and the silent houses and the church with its lights like a heartbeat. "Because tomorrow we stop whispering," she said, "and we'll need a room big enough when this town finally hears itself." Cliffhanger. As they passed Gus's shop, orange light flickered in the windows. Someone had set it on fire. Flames crawled up the shop windows like fingers. Heat rolled at the windshield. Ash lifted into the rain and turned to paste on the glass. Gus's hands went to the door handle by muscle memory. Briggs locked the doors and grabbed his sleeve. "You can't go in there." "My tools," Gus said, like a child listing the names of friends. "My Miriam's blanket." Ava's hand found his. "We have to live to make this matter." He nodded once. Hard. It felt like tearing tape off skin. Briggs called it in to dispatch, out of habit and hope. "Structure fire, Maple and 3rd, full involved," he said. He didn't add, "and nobody's coming." But the room heard it anyway. The fire engine arrived faster than despair. Volunteers leaping off before the truck stopped rolling. A woman Gus had fixed cars for since high school grabbed the hose. A man who'd never thanked him for a free tire rotation shouldered a nozzle like a promise. Water hit glass. Steam roared. A town remembered how to fight. Hale's SUVs rolled past slow, like vultures, pretending to be traffic. One of his men in the passenger seat smiled at the flames. He didn't smile long. A brick bounced off their hood and a roar went up that didn't come from fire. Briggs didn't smile, but his jaw unclenched. "School," he said again. turning away from the blaze because sometimes mercy is leaving a room before it breaks you. They parked behind the gym. The custodian, Mr. Lin, who had watched 3 of his nieces get nosebleeds the same month, opened the door with a ring of keys that sounded like bells at a small wedding. "What do you need?" he asked. "A projector," Ava said. "A microphone. A room full of people who have something to say." "You've got 2 out of 3, Mr. Lin said, and flipped on the auditorium lights. Ava set the binders on the stage like bricks for a house. Briggs called in every deputy he trusted, 3, and told them to choose who they'd rather disappoint. A man with money, or their own children. Gus sat in the front row and finally pulled the envelope from his shirt. He stared. He almost put it back. He didn't. He slid a finger under the flap and lifted the paper like it might break. Miriam's handwriting was there in a careful river. The loops and edges of a woman who put lace doilies under greasy ashtrays just to give beauty a fighting chance. "Gus," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm either braver than I thought, or gone where brave doesn't hurt anymore. Don't let them tell you that dying just happens. Sometimes it's handed to you by someone with clean hands and a signed permit. If you meet a girl with a bag of papers and eyes that don't flinch, listen. She's the one I told to call Sheriff Briggs. She's the reason I asked Dr. Klein for names. She's my apology for leaving before I could fix it." Gus closed his eyes, hard. Miriam, who put pennies on train tracks to show him what pressure does to metal. Miriam, who made pies for miners who coughed blood, because grief needed something sweet sometimes. Miriam, who wasn't a ghost in this letter, she was a hammer. When he opened his eyes, Ava was beside him, not looking. He handed her the letter without words. She scanned it, a tear mixing with rain on her cheek. "She knew you," Ava whispered. "Before I did." Gus nodded. "She knew a lot of people she never told me about. Her way of guarding my heart was filling it with other people." The auditorium doors opened, and a river of town poured in. Students, teachers, the pharmacist, the town nurse, the librarian with arthritis who shelved books like she was setting plates. Father Ray slid into a row and bowed his head like he was loading a slingshot with a prayer. Ava stepped on stage. The mic squeaked and then settled. The projector hummed to life. The sheriff stood to the side, arms folded, not to loom but to lean. "Good people of Dry Creek," Ava said, "I know most of you don't know me. That's okay. I came to be known for one thing, and I hope by the end of tonight it's not my name. I hope it's the names of the people we're going to keep alive." She clicked the remote. The first slide was a map. Red dots bloomed where there had been illnesses too close together to be kind. "For towns," Ava said, "one company. One man whose signature is on all the pages that matter." The name Victor Hale appeared like a bruise on the wall. A murmur rolled the room. Some looked at the doors like they expected men to break them. None left. She clicked again. Emails, memos, flush and forget. Crackerjack, someone had typed when a test showed a spike. Ava didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She laid paper like a mason lays stone, one clean block next to another, until a wall of truth stood where fog had been. Benny rolled a TV cart out from backstage. On it, a monitor and a small camera with a red light. "We're streaming," he told Ava, voice a little proud despite the sweat. "To everyone's phones. Whole county, if Mr. Lin's boosters don't blow." "Let them blow," Mr. Lin said. "I've wanted an excuse to replace those since the Bush administration." They laughed. Brief, blessed. Then they listened. Ava's last slide wasn't a slide. It was a photo of the quarry tap behind the football field, kids' hands underwater, like holy pictures. The jar of water sat on the lectern, rain still clinging to its glass in small constellations. "This is not politics," Ava said. "This is a kitchen. This is a playground. This is a grave. I didn't come to hurt anyone. I came to stop people from hurting us. If you want to help, sign the chain of custody sheets coming down your aisles." Take a sample kit. Film everything. Tomorrow we hand this to the state ourselves. Tonight, we tell the truth like it's a family recipe. We're tired of keeping a secret." The doors banged open. Victor Hale walked in with 2 lawyers, and a smile he should have left in the parking lot. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, spreading his arms like a salesman who just remembered his pitch. "Please, don't let fear shut up," Father Ray said, standing without asking permission from any earthly power. Hale blinked, affronted. "Father, surely nothing," Father Ray said. "I have buried 12 people since Christmas, and I'm tired of asking God to forgive men who still own their sins and rent them out." Laughter burst loud, and mean, and happy. Some cheered. A kid whistled. Hall recovered and tried another tack. "Sheriff Briggs, are we allowing illegal gatherings in public buildings now?" Briggs shrugged. "I figured we'd try a legal one first." Hale sighed, as if things bored him. He turned to Ava. "Miss Hart, you're new here. You don't understand how this town works." Ava smiled without joy. "I do," she said. "It works when the lights are on." She nodded to Benny. He turned the camera. Toward Hale. "We're live," Ava said. "Say hello to your investors." Something in Hale's face, something private and ugly, twitched. People lined up to sign the forms Ava had printed. Each signature was another nail in the coffin of a lie. The nurse hugged Benny. A teen in a football jacket took a kit and went pale but didn't sit down. The librarian steadied the pharmacist's shaking hand and said, "You first," as if they were crossing a tightrope and needed someone to step. Hale tried one last move. "Everything you're doing will ruin property values, dear," he said, voice buttered with concern. "Think of your homes." The room froze. Then a woman in the 3rd row stood, turned, and lifted her shirt to show a scar that climbed her belly like a zipper. "You think I don't?" she said, voice like a shovel hitting rock. "You think I don't think of my kids more than your money?" Hale's smile finally slipped off and fell somewhere nobody bothered to pick it up. Briggs's radio crackled. "Dispatch to Sheriff. State AG's office on line 1. They say they saw the stream. They want to talk now." Briggs handed the phone to Ava. "Agent Monroe," a voice said. "We're dispatching a state team. Hold the room. Keep the chain of custody intact. And Ms. Hart, yes, don't be alone." She hung up and looked at Gus. He nodded once. He had no intention of letting her be alone for the rest of his life, if he could help it. Hale leaned toward his lawyers. "We're leaving," he hissed, swallowing his own town for the first time in years. "You came to a church and lost," Father Ray said softly. "Maybe go sit in a bar to balance your day." Hale left. The town exhaled, a long, shaking, grateful sound. Then someone's phone buzzed, then another. A whisper ran, then a ripple, then words. "Your shop," Benny said to Gus. "It's gone." Gus closed his eyes. Miriam's blanket, the radio, the smell of January oil and June dust. Gone. He opened them and smiled at Ava, and this time it hurt like happiness. "Then we'll build too," he said. Cliffhanger. Blue lights flashed across the back wall. The state convoy had arrived, so had an arrest warrant. For Gus. The state attorney walked down the aisle with purpose and a bodyguard built like a barn. She wore a navy suit that had seen more funerals than parties, and eyes that had seen more confessions than lies. She shook Briggs's hand, nodded to Father Ray, and stopped in front of Gus and Ava. "Double quotes, Ms. Hart," she said. "Mr. Calder." Ava lifted her chin. "You came fast." "We were already looking," the attorney said. "Your broadcast poured gasoline on a fire that needed to burn." She opened a folder. There was the paper with teeth. "Mr. Calder," she said, "I have to take you into custody." Half the room shouted no. The other half reached for their phones. Gus held up both hands, palms out. He had this strange urge to laugh. "What for?" "Breaking and entering at the water facility," she said, and interfering with a locked gate at a regulated site. The room roared. Father Ray did not swear, but it looked like he wanted to, and had a hymn ready to cover it. Ava stepped forward. "He saved evidence from being destroyed," she said. "You're charging the man who kept your case alive while the suspect is at home burning documents." The attorney's face didn't change. "He will be processed and released on recognizance," she said. "Sometimes we have to arrest good men so we can lock bad ones up for decades." Gus nodded once. He'd been arrested twice in his life already, once in '69 for sitting where a sign said he shouldn't, and once in '83 for telling a mine boss his men were finished dying for pennies. Both times, he'd felt more free in the cuffs than on the couch. "Do your job," he told the attorney. "I'll do mine." Two deputies he didn't know stepped forward. Briggs blocked them with his triangle of a body. "You'll cuff him in front of me," he said, "and you'll treat him like the last thread holding a sweater." They did. Gus held out his hands. The metal kissed his wrists. Ava made a small sound no one heard but him. He turned to her. "Open the shop tomorrow," he whispered. "It's Ash," she said. "Then open it anyway," he said. "Put a fold-out table on the slab and call it a counter." He winked. The deputies almost smiled. They led him down the aisle. People reached to touch his shoulder. Someone started to clap, the awkward, grateful kind that knows the moment is wrong and does it anyway. By the time he hit the back doors, the whole room was standing. Outside, the rain had stopped. Dry Creek Street reflected a sky that looked like it wanted to apologize. They put Gus in the back of a cruiser. He looked out the window, like a kid at the zoo. The attorney leaned in. "For what it's worth," she said, "my father was a machinist. Men like you raised this country. I won't let you carry this trial like a sack of bolts." Gus nodded and looked at the courthouse across the square. He had fixed the judge's grandson's bicycle 3 times. He hoped the kid's chain didn't fall off during recess tomorrow. Back inside the school, Ava stepped to the mic again. Her hands shook once, and then were still. "Okay," she said to a town holding its breath. "Let's do this the hard way." She assigned routes. She sent parents in pairs to taps and wells with labeled kits. She handed out QR codes for uploading videos to 3 separate clouds. She wrote on the whiteboard like it was a recipe, and her grandmother was watching. Briggs deputized volunteers, including Mr. Linton, who took the badge like it was a joke, and then stood straighter. Benny took the stage. "My logs," he said, voice breaking but loud, "show that we exceeded safe levels 21 times last year. They told me to fix the spreadsheet. I didn't. I printed it." He held up pages like sheets on a line. "I'm tired of ironing lies." Laughter rolled the fear out again. By midnight, the school gym had turned into a laboratory with folding tables. Kids wore gloves too big for their wrists and labeled vials in handwriting that would be memorized by historians someday. The librarian ran chain of custody like she'd been born for it. The pharmacist cheered teens who sealed bags. Without Bubbles like he was at their games, Ava moved through it all with a calm that made people believe they were safe because she was here. Inside, her stomach was a tight, hot knot. Outside, her voice was water over stone. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. The text was simple. "He's in booking. He's fine. You're not. They just left Hales to S." Your name on the radio made them hungry. She looked up. Briggs was across the gym, talking to a mother who had questions about custody seals. Ava slipped to the side door and tapped the sheriff's sleeve. "They're coming," she said. "How many?" 2 SU. "The same ones." He exhaled through his nose. "Then we make sure when they get here, they're the ones afraid." He killed the overhead lights and left the work lamps humming like bees. He stationed Father Ray at the door with Mr. Lin, who cradled a mag light like a cudgel. He put 3 football boys by the north exit, not because he wanted a fight, but because he knew boys who had just learned about it. Poison in their bodies aren't afraid of men in suits. The SUVs pulled into the lot, and headlights off. No one got out. Briggs stepped outside alone and let the door click behind him. Evening, he called. Nothing. Tell your boss the cameras are rolling, he added, pointing at 3 phones in windows pointed like eyes. Still nothing. He turned to go back in. A voice floated from the dark. Sheriff, he paused. My boss says there's a price for everything. Briggs tilted his head. He'll learn he can't afford this town. The SUVs slid away like bad thoughts. Inside, Ava finally sat down for the first time in 14 hours. Her legs shook like a truck without shocks. Benny blurted, Are you a journalist? And then, Sorry, not my business. She looked at her hands. She looked at the jar. She looked at Miriam's letter beside it, charging the room like a battery. No, she said. My mom was. Is that why you came? He asked. No, she said, and her voice turned into something that wasn't words at first. Then it was. When I was 9, my mother took me to a funeral in Dry Creek. The woman in the casket wore a blue dress and had nails painted like she had been ready for a party. She died too young. A man with oil under his nails cried like the roof was leaking inside him. I never forgot him. Benny understood before the room did. Miriam, he said. Ava nodded. She told my mom, when it's your turn. Tell the truth like it's dinner and everyone's hungry. I didn't know it would be my turn so soon. The room was quiet enough to hear refrigerator hum and pencil scratches and the sound of grief agreeing to work evenings. The attorney came back at 3 a.m., hair down, eyes brighter, folder thicker. Judge signed the orders, she said, not bothering to introduce the judge who followed her looking like he'd swallowed a lemon and liked it. We're seizing Hale's records at dawn. A pulse lifted the gym. People clapped without meaning to. The football boys thumped each other. Father Ray exhaled like he had held breath since the first chemo bag and finally decided to live. Ava finally smiled and let it stay. Her phone buzzed again. Booking complete. Called her out on Roar at 9. She texted back. Tell him to be at the school by 9:15 and tell him we saved him a cup of coffee that tastes like nails. She closed her eyes for one deep second. When she opened them, morning had the kind of gray that means decisions are coming. Cliffhanger. At 8:50 a.m., the fire alarm screamed. Not in the school. In Hale's office building. Someone had pulled the lever and propped the back door open by the time the convoy of cruisers and one battered pickup reached Hale's headquarters. A line of employees stood outside hugging sweaters and laptops like life jackets. The building's back door yawned open like a mouth that had been forced. Smoke didn't pour from anywhere. The alarm shrieked anyway, trying to make honest men out of the frightened. The attorney pointed. 3 teams, she said. Sheriff, you're with me? She glanced at Ava. You're with me too. Briggs didn't argue. Some mornings you trust strangers, like brothers. They moved through the lobby. The receptionist pretended to be confused and failed at it. The elevator dinged with petty cheer. They took the stairs. On the 3rd floor, a door marked records tried to look like it wasn't sweating. Briggs tried the knob. Locked. He looked at the attorney. Do it, she said. He kicked. The door jumped once and gave up. Inside, steel shelves, gray boxes, and a security camera with a red eye that didn't blink right. Kill that, the attorney said. Mr. Lin popped up at the detective's elbow, as if he'd been born there. Already did, he said, unplugging a small black box from the wall. Fake lens. Hidden lens here. He pointed with the matte light, then taped over it, with the calm of a man fixing a leaky faucet. Ava lifted the first lid. Payments. Vendor names. A ledger with columns too neat to be clean. Look. She held up an invoice stamped Site Cleanup Quarry. Paid to a shell company with an address that was a field. Briggs slid a hand under a lower shelf and pulled out a binder duct-taped into the shadows. Inside, photographs, night shots, trucks backing up to chain link, hoses bleeding into dark water, a date stamp old enough to be your alibi. Chain of custody, the attorney said, and the librarian, how had she gotten here? Stepped forward, with labels in her bag, and the smile of a woman taking a test she studied for all her life. On the 4th floor, the conference room door was unlocked, the table set with coffee cups and a carton of cream like a brunch for men who thought nothing could touch them. On the whiteboard someone had written, messaging, blame heavy rains, praise swift response. Ava took a picture. Then she wiped the board with the sleeve of her jacket. Leave it, the attorney said. Ava looked at her. No, the attorney nodded. Okay? They reached Hale's office. The door was open. His desk was clean. To clean. In the corner, a shredder sat warm, stomach full of lies cut into spaghetti. Bag it, the attorney said. We'll unspaghetti it later. Ava walked to a file cabinet that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Because men like Hale think the past is a trophy, not a trap. She tugged the bottom drawer. Stuck. She yanked harder. It came open with a sound like a cough. Inside, 5 red folders with gold fasteners and Miriam's name on the first line. Called her. Miriam Community. Oyutra Sacheva's hand shook. She opened it. Meeting notes. A list of difficult locals. Miriam's name circled with the word galvanize. A photo of Gus's shop from the street. Miriam in the doorway, hand on the frame, like she had been holding the town up with a palm. Emails. Keep an eye on her. Husband is a problem stubborn, liked by low-wage base. Ava swallowed fire. She handed the file to the attorney. This is a kill list, she said. The attorney didn't argue. She just added it to the stack and tightened her jaw. We're done. They finally saw Gus coming up the stairs as they came down. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair was combed with 2 fingers, and his eyes were bright like a dog who smelled a trail again. You good? He asked Ava. Tired, she said. On purpose. He nodded. That's the best kind. They stepped onto the sidewalk, into a morning full of sirens that weren't for show. Reporters pressed microphones, but didn't ask good questions. They never do until after the verdict. Hale arrived in a suit the color of expensive denial, flanked by 2 lawyers and a calm that belonged to men who always believed the room would bend to them eventually. It's all misunderstanding, he told the camera. The young lady is confused. The sheriff is overzealous. We will cooperate. A teenage boy in a football hoodie yelled, "Drink your own water." And the crowd laughed like someone had opened a window. The attorney stepped to the mic. This office has reason to believe a criminal enterprise endangered the health of 4 communities for profit. We are seeking indictments on charges, including poisoning, fraud, and conspiracy. She paused. If you have documents, bring them to the school. If you have secrets, bring them to Father Ray. If you have fear, bring it to me. They started back toward the cars. Hale stopped Ava with a look that wanted to be a hand. You think this is over? He asked softly. For her alone. No, she said. I think this is the first day you've had to live like the rest of us. He smiled, a small, cold thing. I don't lose. Then you haven't met enough ends, she said. They were halfway across the square when a scream cut the morning. Not fear. Surprise. People scattered. A black SUV leaped the curb. It aimed at Gus like a promise. Briggs moved, he shouted. Ava turned and saw death on 4 tires. Gus didn't run. He never had. Time goes strange when you make a choice. Ava's feet were moving before her mind. She grabbed Gus's sleeve and hauled. He stumbled, falling. The SUV clipped the bench where he'd been standing and chewed wood into splinters. The crowd swarmed. The SUV's rear window blew out, not from a gun, but from a brick thrown by the librarian with the best aim in town. Someone else swung a shovel. Someone else filmed everything, close and calm, like a surgeon. The driver gunned it. The engine screamed. The hood popped. The car died. And the boy in the football hoodie who had listened to old Gus talk about carburetors since he was 6 jumped on the hood and ripped out the coil wire with a grin that could start wars. Briggs pulled the driver out and put him down on wet stone like a father putting a misbehaving child in a chair. Cuffs, rights, done. A hush. Then, noise. The kind that tastes like copper and sugar. Ava sat on the curb, shaking now. Gus sat beside her and handed her a handkerchief with M stitched in one corner. She pressed it to her face and didn't ask where he'd saved it from the fire. He didn't tell her. Some salvations are private. He looked across the square at Hale and saw something like awe in the man's face. Like he'd just learned towns are real. Come on, Gus said to Ava. We've got a shop to open. It burned, she whispered, cracking a smile through tears. Then we'll open a tent, he said, and call it a roof. Cliffhanger. Before they reached the school, Ava's phone lit with a call from a number she hadn't seen in years. The name on the screen read, Mother. Ava stopped walking so suddenly, Gus nearly ran into her. She stared at the name on her phone like it was a ghost who asked to sit at the table. Answer, Gus said, gentle and firm. She did. Mom. Noise in the background. A train. A hospital. A hallway with echoes. Ava. Her mother breathed. A voice that used to read bedtime stories and cut through lies. I've been watching the stream. I'm so proud of you I can't breathe. Ava turned toward the school, so the square couldn't see her face crack. Where are you? On my way to Dry Creek, her mother said. I had to stop in Pine County to give an affidavit. Dr. Klein is with me. We'll be there by noon. Are you safe? Ava asked. Her mother laughed. Safe enough to be useful. The call clicked, then held. A small delay. A big promise. They reached the school. Inside, the gym had grown a new layer of purpose. The state AG's team had set up a table beside the librarian's chain of custody altar. The pharmacist slept in a folding chair with his mouth open like a little kid. Father Ray poured coffee that tasted like penance. Ava put the phone down on speaker on the table. My mom is on her way, she told the room, voice bright and humble. She was the journalist Miriam asked to call Sheriff Briggs. A murmur. Frowns flipping to smiles. Put me on speaker, baby, her mother said. Ava tapped the icon. This is Lena Hart, the voice said to the room. Some of you know my work. Some of you thought I made your town look bad for a week 5 years ago. Some of you clipped those articles and put them in a drawer because they felt like a mirror and you weren't ready to look. I forgive all of you. Today, I can't be in 2 places at once, but I sent you something ahead. Mr. Lin rolled in a dolly stacked with banker's boxes. The top one had heart written in Sharpie. He set them down with ceremony. I saved what I couldn't print, Lena said. Not because I didn't try. Because my editor's advertisers decided they didn't like it when the paper mentioned their names in paragraphs with the word poison. The attorney put a hand on the box like swearing on a book. Ma'am, she said, thank you. Father Ray crossed himself. Not because he thought the boxes were holy. Because he knew they were dot. Ava leaned closer to the phone. Did you know about me coming? The pause was love, I hoped. I told you when you were 13 that telling the truth is a long walk in bad weather. I didn't know you'd pick a storm, but I raised you to keep your coat. Gus cleared his throat and spoke to the phone like to an old friend. Lena, it's Gus Calder. You saved me from turning into a mean old man when Miriam passed. You said the best way to honor a woman like her is to build what she would have demanded. Lena laughed and cried all at once. Gus, you have always been a better sermon than anything that church ever printed. People laughed, soft. Some cried. Everyone straightened their shoulders a little. Noon came. So did Lena and Dr. Klein. They walked into the gym to applause that felt like a parade and a courtroom blended. Lena hugged Ava so hard it looked like 2 pieces of a map finally finding the seam. Dr. Klein hugged Gus and kissed his cheek and said, "Miriam would slap us if we stopped now." The attorney gathered them on the stage. "We will take a formal statement," she said. "We will file charges. We will request the judge remand Mr. Hale due to attempted vehicular assault. And we will do one more thing." She looked at the town and smiled like she had seen a few, and picked this one. "We will hold a public hearing here tonight at 5. Everyone who wants to be heard will be heard." That afternoon was a blur made from paper and coffee and relief. By evening, the auditorium was standing room only again. People who hadn't spoken to their neighbors in a decade stood shoulder to shoulder. Hale tried to enter and was escorted back out by men who had never moved him. When he said move, the hearing wasn't a show trial, it was a mirror. People stood and told the room what they had survived, what they had lost, and what they refused to lose again. The football coach apologized for not knowing about the tap behind the field. The mine widow read the list of men who drank from it at lunch. A child got on stage and said, "I used to be sick, and then my daddy changed the filter, and now I only get sick sometimes." And half the room had to sit down. The attorney asked questions, like a scaffold, not a trap. Ava stood behind her like a second heart. When it ended, you could feel the town taller. They filed out into a sunset that had the decency to be beautiful. The square smelled like wet brick and roasted peanuts from a cart. No one had had the patience to license properly, ever. Briggs's radio chirped. He listened, face still, then handed it to Ava, like it was a snake he had charmed and needed someone else to hold for a minute. "Say it again," she told the voice. "Judge just signed remand," the dispatcher said. "Hale is going to county." The cheer that went up could have lifted roof beams. Gus put his arm around Ava's shoulders without asking. She leaned into it like she'd been waiting to be that height. "We're not done," she said. "Nope," he said, "but I like this smile." They walked past the ashes of his shop. The fire crew had left a yellow tape that looked ridiculous across a life. Gus stepped over it and stood on the slab. The radio survived in a melted hump. The safe was blackened but not gone. He touched it with his boot. "Tomorrow," he said, "we sweep." "Tonight," Ava said, "we write a sign." They did. On a piece of plywood they found behind the gym. They painted with a roller in black ink, "Calder and Hart open for repairs." They propped it on cinder blocks on the slab. People walking home from the hearing saw it and cheered like it was a new baby. Ava's phone buzzed again. She frowned. "Unknown number." "Answer," Lena said, rubbing her shoulders like saving the world makes you cold. Ava did. A man's voice filled her ear. Smooth, tired, older than it thought it sounded. "Ms. Hart," he said. "You don't know me. My name is Warren Hale." Ava stopped breathing. Victor's father. The old man who had held the town decades before his son and let it fall. "I did things I'm not proud of," Warren said. "My son did worse. I have a safe deposit box. Keys are at the bank, under the painting of the river I donated. The manager knows. He owes me a favor. Tell him I finally asked for it back. He'll give you the keys." "What's in the box?" Ava asked. Voice a wire pulled tight. "Records. Ledgers. The letter I wrote my son when I told him the deal with the quarry turned my stomach. He didn't listen." Silence, like a long mile. "Make it count, girl." The line went dead. Ava looked at Gus. He smiled like he was 60 and 16. "Field trip?" he asked. "Field trip," she said. Cliffhanger. They reached the bank at sunrise. The manager handed over 2 keys with shaking hands, and 3 men in suits stepped out of the elevator and blocked the vault. The men in suits did not wear badges, but trouble hangs on people like a smell. One had a scar under his eye, like a map he didn't read in time. One had a watch that ticked too loud. The third had knuckles that were shiny with old fights. "Bank's closed," Watch said. "It's open for me," the manager squeaked, then coughed like he wanted his voice back. He lifted the keys, in a show of courage that looked like a tremble. Mr. Hale gave standing instructions. Mr. Hale is indisposed, Scar said. We'll take it from here. Gentlemen, the attorney's voice cut in from the doorway. It was not a gentle voice. You won't take anything from here that doesn't belong to you. They turned. Behind her stood Sheriff Briggs, Father Ray with his not-soft fists, Mr. Lynn with the mag light, Lena Hart with the camera, Dr. Klein with a folder heavy enough to hurt, the librarian with a pen like a dagger, Benny with his logs, 3 football boys, the pharmacist, and a dozen people who had woken up before their alarm because justice stands better with an audience. Scar snorted. You think a crowd scares us? No, Briggs said, rolling his shoulders. I think a crowd makes us honest. The attorney lifted a paper. This is a court order to take possession of any box belonging to Warren or Victor Hale. Shiny Knuckles smirked. Judge signed that before coffee. He signed it while you were practicing your lines, she said. The manager turned the keys, and the vault door sighed open, with a breath of cool air like a cellar where grandmothers keep peaches for winter. Warren Hale's box was not heavy. It was modest in a way that made men like Victor sneer. The attorney opened it on a table in the lobby where the morning light could see. Inside, ledgers written with fountain pen in a neat hand, receipts, a photo of Warren holding a baby that would become a man who forgot he was one, a letter. The attorney handed the letter to Ava. She unfolded it and read aloud. Victor, it began. I built something crooked and told myself I could straighten it once it stood. That's how men like us sleep. One day your mother looked at me like I wasn't at the table with her anymore. That day, I tried to stop. I failed. If you're reading this, you still have a choice. A man who won't let a well run clear deserves to be thirsty. WTHE room felt different after that. Not because a bad man got redeemed. He hadn't. Because a worse man had been given a chance and thrown it away. People need to see where a road is, even if they don't want to walk it. The attorney took the ledgers, signed her own chain of custody sheet, and smiled. This will do. Shiny Knuckles stepped forward like a last bad habit. Briggs stepped into him like a door shutting. It ended where it began, with hands and choices, and who gets to touch what doesn't belong to them. No punches, no poetry, just a man deciding he was done moving because someone with nicer shoes told him to. By midday, the AG's office held a press conference on the courthouse steps. They announced charges that sounded like a roof of crimes: criminal endangerment, environmental fraud, racketeering. They named names. They handed out copies of ledgers to reporters who scribbled like they were tired of writing about ribbon cuttings and wanted to write about something that would be remembered at funerals and family dinners. Hale was transported to county in shackles. He didn't look at the square. He looked at his shoes. Gus and Ava stood at the edge of the crowd. Neither liked the center. Both liked the work. Come on, Gus said. We've got a slab to sweep. They spent the afternoon at the ruin that used to be his shop. People came with brooms and shovels and trash bags. The librarian brought lemonade. The football boys built sawhorses and didn't nail their thumbs. Mr. Lynn rewired a temporary light and didn't die. Father Ray blessed a pile of new rags. At sunset, the slab looked like a stage. The plywood sign calder and heart open for repair stood like a joke that was telling them. Someone rolled a rusty toolbox onto the slab. Inside, a couple of wrenches that had survived. Gus picked one up and kissed it. People clapped like that was normal. Maybe it was . Lena raised her hand. Before you all go, she said, one more thing. She nodded to Dr. Klein, who handed Ava a manila envelope. Ava opened it and froze. Inside lay a deed. New, crisp. Parcel 17, Maple and 3rd. Owner Calder and Hart Community Auto School. What? Ava whispered. Lena smiled. Warren Hale's box had more than ledgers. It had a quitclaim deed he drafted 10 years ago When Miriam chewed him out in the grocery store aisle over the price of milk rising after a flood, he never filed it. I did. This morning. Gus blinked. A school? Lena nodded. You teach kids to fix cars and tractors, and maybe their own lives. Free. You pay yourself in pie, Dr. Klein added. Funded by a settlement that will make this town's playgrounds safer than heaven. A hush, then a cry. The kind of cry that turns into laughter and hands flung wide. The town surged forward. They hugged, they cried. They said each other's names like grace. Ava turned to Gus, eyes shining with rain that never fell. We're partners. He held out his greasy hand. She took it with both of hers. The crowd cheered, because sometimes a handshake is a revolution. Later, after the speeches and the jokes and the promises, after the sun dropped and the lights came on like stars that decided to live at human height, Ava and Gus sat on the edge of the slab and swung their legs like kids. Open tomorrow? Ava asked. Open now, Gus said, pointing to a pickup limping up the street, exhaust dragging like a tail. Looks like our first student needs a diagnosis. The truck sputtered to a stop. A teen climbed out with an expression that mixed hope and embarrassment. It was making a sound like he attempted a noise somewhere between a cat and a kettle. Gus nodded, deadly serious. Ah, the classic move off. Ava grinned, slid off the slab, and popped the hood. She moved with the calm of someone who had broken locks that should have stayed shut and opened rooms that needed air. Alternator belt, she said. Loosen the bracket. Push here. Tighten. You'll make it to school and back until we get a new one. The boy beamed like she'd given him Wyoming. The crowd began to drift home. The attorney shook their hands and told them trials are long and she likes coffee. Father Ray blessed the slab and told God to watch his language if he ever talks about Dry Creek again. Briggs tipped his hat and said he had reports to write that might actually do some good. Gus and Ava stood alone at last, the slab warm under their boots, the night gentle after so many rough hours. Ava reached into her bag and pulled out Miriam's letter. She read the last line aloud, a benediction stitched in ink. Fix what I couldn't, love what I left, and when the hard thing comes to your door in the rain, let it in and give it your only blanket. Ava folded the letter and handed it to Gus. He tucked it in his shirt, pocket over his heart, where it had been all day, without him knowing. Thank you, he said. For what? She asked. For choosing us, he said. Ava looked at the town, at the church steeple, at the school windows, still glowing, at the slab with the sign, at the boy driving away with his alternator, humming a song that had room for new verses. I didn't choose you, she said softly. You chose each other. I just turned on the lights. They watched the stars come out until the cold asked them to go inside. They didn't hurry. They'd earned slow as they climbed into Gus's truck. He looked at the empty spot on the bench seat where Miriam used to sit, and then at the seat between him and Ava, which didn't feel empty at all. He started the engine, the old V8, purring like a cat that had decided to live forever. Home? He asked. Ava smiled. Home. They rolled into the night, past a town that had learned to be loud enough to be heard and quiet enough to listen, through streets that would hold the sound of their tires for a long time. The storm had moved on. The road wasn't easy. It wasn't supposed to be. It was theirs. Moral. A small kindness can break a giant lie. When one person stands in the rain, we decide what kind of town we are, one that locks the door and lowers the blinds, or one that opens the shop, turns on the radio, and gives away the last warm blanket. True wealth is not in what we keep, but in the hands we hold when it's time to rebuild.